How's everybody doing? Hey, we are really glad you're here. Happy Mother's Day. You guys look fantastic. You really do. Well, most of you. A few of you could have tried harder, but you really look great. So let's get started. And man, the first thing you got to do is know who you're talking to, right? So let's ask, because you got to know who you're talking to. The first rule of communication is know your audience. Second rule of communication is you don't talk about Fight Club. So how many of you are married? Let me ask that. Hey, all right. All right. And how many of you are single? By the way, don't look at me. Look around. These are your options. So how many of you are single and want to be married? How many of you are married? And well, let me not finish that. That's a problem. So, all right. So we're going to spend some time today on Mother's Day talking about marriage, talking about family. This is one of my favorite topics to teach on. It's something I am extremely passionate about, mostly because my wife and I both come from divorced homes. At last count, our parents have a combined total of 10 divorces between them. If we include step-parents, that number goes up to 16. And I say at last count because we have no idea if they're done. And so, but Carrie and I started looking, and in our families, every aunt, every uncle, every parent, every grandparent is divorced. Even the pets are legally separated. It's a bad situation. And so, and honestly, there's no training on marriage, right? For the most part. I mean, you didn't get a class in college on marriage, neither did I. And it probably would have been a good idea since 91% of people get married. And a lot of parents don't talk to their kids about marriage and what it takes to be happily married. And sometimes because they aren't happily married themselves. And that's why we need God's wisdom more than ever when it comes to relationships, because so many marriages struggle and so many relationships either don't finish well or don't finish at all. And I can tell you this, that I have been married to the most amazing woman for almost 30 years now. Yeah, I appreciate that. And my wife is a superhero as far as I'm concerned, and she proves that over and over with her dedication to our family and how she just goes above and beyond for all of us in a million different ways. And I thought about how I can explain that to you, and I thought I could tell you maybe this story. If you've been around Calvary for a long time, you've heard it before, but this is probably about 15 years ago. We were on a family vacation at Disney World, and our vacation was over. We had checked out of our hotel, but one of the things that the kids had asked us was if they could rent one of those Surrey bikes, the bikes where everybody pedals or whatever, because there's a hotel called the Boardwalk, and behind the Boardwalk Hotel by Epcot, you can rent those, and there's a lake back there where there's some other resorts, and so you can kind of ride around the lake. And so we had gone back there one night, and so Mia was like, could we get one of those bikes? And I said, before we leave, we'll do it. And sure enough, I had forgotten. I had packed up the car, and we were about to go back home, and she's like, hey, are we going to get the bikes? And I'm like, yeah, that's where we're headed. And so I park at the Boardwalk, and then we go back there, and we rent the bike. And so now the kids, Mia's about 5 at the time, Xander's 2. He's not even talking yet. And so we had to put them in the front where they'd kind of sit. And then Carrie and I were the ones that were pedaling. Now, my wife is 7 months pregnant at this time. And so we start going around the lake, and sure enough, you kind of go around the lake, you go up this hill, and I'm like, man, it's tough, but we're making it. And so, and then Mia is like, she has this little bell, and she's like ringing the bell, Bobby, go faster, go faster. And I'm like, listen, lady, my legs are on fire, and this is the best I can do. So we go up this bigger hill, then a smaller hill first, and then there's a bigger hill, and then finally we get around back to the Boardwalk, and I'm like, all right, guys, we did it. Let's go home. And then Mia starts ringing the bell again, and she's like, one more time. And then Xander can't talk yet, but he's going, but, he knows what's going on, so he's telling me one more time. And so Carrie's like, listen, we got nowhere to be. We're going home, so let's just go one more time. And I'm like, all right, fine. So we go, we make the turn, and we're at the smaller hill now. And we're going up the smaller hill, and Carrie turns to me, and she says, Bob, I'm sorry, I'm pregnant. I can't pedal. I can't pedal anymore. And so she stops pedaling. Now there's 4 people on this mode of transport and only one person pedaling, which his name is me. And so anyway, so now I am just grinding, trying to get through it. Sure enough, I finally make it to the top of that hill. And then once you get to the top of that hill, there's like a little bit of a descent. And so you start going down, you start picking up some momentum. And my plan is, because there's a bigger hill on the other side when you make the turn kind of by where the Swan and Dolphin Hotel are. And so I'm like, if I can pick up enough momentum, I could probably get like 3/4 of the way up, and then I'll just try to pedal as fast as I can to get to the top. That's at least the strategy. By the way, FYI, the strategy did not work. The baby knew. And so she's like, I'm hearing that plan, and it makes me sad. And so it did not work. And so anyway, so I get about 1/4 of the way up the hill, and that's about as far as my momentum takes me. And now I start pedaling. And Carrie says, Bob, listen, why don't I just get off the bike, and then it'll be easier for you to just pedal with the kids. And I'm like, but sweetie, you're pregnant. You know what? Get off. And so she gets off the bike, and that helps me because I get maybe about halfway up the hill. But I can't anymore. My legs are just wasted. And so then I'm at this place now where I can't pedal anymore, and now the pedal is starting to go backwards. And then I get this, and what I can only explain as this incredible burst of energy. And I just I start screaming, and I get all the way up the hill, just exploded with energy. And I turned around to tell my wife what happened, and I see she's the one pushing the bike up the hill. And I went to tell her to stop, but instead I said, keep pushing. And now I'm going to tell you, I don't like the picture of my 7-month pregnant wife pushing us up the hill, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't stop her until we got to the top. And now the worst part of this whole story is that as Carrie is pushing us up the hill on the bike, there's this family of 4, mom and dad and the 2 twin blonde girls that are all 4 of them pedaling by as they're on their bike. And I hear one of the girls say, Mommy, why does the mean man make his wife push him up the hill? I'm like, don't you dare judge me, lady. And listen, this is the picture. It's the picture of so many marriages that we start out on the marriage trail, and we're like in unison, pedaling together. We're happy. We're so blessed by who we got. They're like, we wake up in the morning like, I can't believe I got you. I look at you and I feel like I won the lottery. And then, things happen and life goes on, and then, things change, and you wake up one morning and you're like, when I look at you, I feel like I entered a contest and lost. And it's not the way it should be, because listen, whether you realize it or not, that outside of your decision to follow Jesus, the person that you choose to marry should be the best decision that you've made in your life. And by the way, and if you say, well, but I feel like it's not there, or it's not what I hoped, and whatever, that's okay. Change is possible. You can change. Your spouse can change. Your marriage can change. You can have the marriage that you've always dreamed of. And that's what we're going to talk about in our time together. And so on this Mother's Day, I wanted to talk about probably the most revered couple in Judaism. What are considered like the first family of Judaism, Abraham and Sarah. Abraham was the father of faith. Sarah is the picture of the model for being a wife, being a mom throughout the Bible. And guess what? You know what I love when I read the story of Abraham and Sarah is that their life wasn't perfect. They had problems too, and because no marriage is perfect. And listen, what I love about their story is that it just intersects with our reality. Because, listen, their story is a lot like ours, that it's about making challenging choices and trying to be wise and trusting God and taking steps, even though we aren't sure if everything is going to work out the way that we hope it does. But this, I know, is that if you will do the things that we're going to talk about today, that we watch this couple do, you can have the marriage that you've always dreamed of, because God really does want to bless your marriage. God really does want your marriage to not just survive, but thrive. And if we're willing enough to trust Him in what He's asking us to do. So we're going to be in the book of Genesis today, chapter 12. And if you have your notes, and here's what we read. It says, "Now the Lord had said to Abram, 'Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed.'" Now, if you pause there and give me your attention, the marriage that you've always wanted, what does it take? What are we looking for? Now, I'm going to give you three things in particular. Number one is that you want a marriage with the promise of blessing. Now, our introduction to Abraham and Sarah is their calling from God. The calling for them to leave everything that they know, everything that they would consider normal, and to follow God into this calling to a place that they're going to be called to. And so we realize that it's like they're trusting God, they're trusting each other, they're trusting this calling that they've received. But I want you to realize something that we might look at as challenging, and yet they still made it work. This is the reality that they were born into. Abraham and Sarah didn't pick each other. No, because all marriages in that culture were arranged. And listen, when I was younger, I remember being in my 20s thinking that the idea of an arranged marriage was so antiquated and unnecessary. And then I became a dad of 3 kids. And now I'm starting to see the wisdom of arranged marriages, because I see how my kids order at restaurants. And we did Mother's Day yesterday because I've been here all day. And so, but I took Carrie to this Greek restaurant that she likes, and we go there, and my kids are asking about the chicken finger selection on the server, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, guys, just order something off the, tell me about the stuff off the kids' menu. And I'm like, this, and this is what I'm thinking. I'm like, they're gonna pick a spouse, and who do you know they're gonna pick? Chicken fingers. And it just really, it concerns me. And because, you know why? Because kids don't know what to look for. And they'll be like, oh, he's cute. You know what's cute? Good credit. That's what's cute. And so, well, we have the same interests. Yeah. Speaking of interest, is this guy in crushing debt? That's the only interest I'm interested in. Well, he's funny. It's not funny, a criminal record. And we're going to find out what that's all about when we do the background check, because I have lots of friends that are lawyers. And by the way, speaking of that, even if my lawyers can't get me off, if this guy is a clown, I am willing to do hard time. I will start a prison ministry from the inside. I don't care. And so, now, so when we talk about the promise that Abraham and Sarah get, the promise is, follow me and I'm going to bless you. When we think about blessing, what does the word mean? Well, in Hebrew as in Greek, so in both the Old Testament and in the New, the word blessing means, oh, how happy is. The challenge is a word that typically means that is a reflection of joy, of something that comes from the inside of us walking with God, walking according to his ways. We tend to, in our culture, we tend to associate blessed with more. And so like, oh man, I got blessed with more money at work. Oh man, I ordered a medium fry at Chick-fil-A and I got a large. This is my testimony. And so it's like, well, because it's just more. But listen, the blessing doesn't just appear when there's more. Sometimes the blessing can start when there's nothing. And you believe that there can be more qualitatively and quantitatively if we do what's right. Because friends, I told you this before, and I'm going to say it again, that God really does want to bless your marriage. That means that he wants to do great things in your marriage, even into future generations. But listen, God blessing your marriage doesn't mean that there's more instantly the minute you embrace the promise and the commandments of God. The blessing begins with believing, and it grows in unseen places until it's visible and nobody can deny the work that God is doing. When Carrie and I got married, we had nothing. People asked us, they're like, oh, where did you guys register when you got married? There was no registering when we got married because we were broke and all of our friends were broke. And we were college students. And so the way that we got all of our furniture is that my wife's aunt was dating a guy, follow that trail. She was dating a guy who was the manager of this storage unit facility. And they had a particular storage unit. When someone wouldn't pay for a particular period of time, they would take all their stuff and put it in that main storage unit. And so then what happened is that he said, hey, so he calls and he's like, hey, what do you guys need for your apartment? And I was like, an inside? There was everything. Like, it was, unless it's bolted down and they gave it to us, we don't have anything. And he's like, all right, why don't you come down and pick out a few things? So by the way, that's where we registered, was at a storage unit and other people's stuff because they had been naughty and not paid. That was where we got our stuff. And so we picked out a love seat, we got a couch, we got a table and 2 chairs, and we were like, whew. And then a third one showed up, and we're like, wow, one more than we need, because just the 2 of us. So that, and then we got a coffee table, but the coffee table had no bolts or screws. And it was all wood, and you had to put this thing together a certain way, and we called it the puzzle table, because then when you got to the end, there were like these 4 little wedges, and if you did it all correctly, this thing was pretty sturdy. If you did not do it correctly, the thing it was Jenga. And it was clean up on aisle 12. And so that was the whole thing. And so anyway, but we were college students, and I was finishing my undergrad in theology. I was working for this company that manufactured home accessories. Carrie was in school working at a bank, and our budget for the month for groceries was $35. And you were like, oh, did you guys get married in the 1800s? And so was Abraham Lincoln president when you got married? And so, no, it's like, and by the way, even back then, $35 wasn't enough for groceries. And that's just all that we had when we were getting started. And so Carrie would walk across the street from our little apartment to this U-Pick, kind of this farm. We drove by there the other day. It's a Walmart now. And so the food quality has gone down. And but the U-Pick was there, and there was this bucket that had like day-old vegetables and fruit or whatever. And so Carrie would buy some of those and kind of cut off the parts that were going bad. And that's kind of how we lived the first year. And you're like, wow, did you survive? Look at me, I did okay. And but there was no TV, there was no cable. We had a TV, but we didn't have cable. And people said, did you have a DVD? Like, no, we didn't have a VCR. There was nothing. And you know what we did? Let me tell you what we did. We talked and talked and talked and talked, and we learned how to communicate. And other things we did, especially when you date for 4.5 years and you wait until you get married. So we were going for it. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just ask your parents on the way home. They'll fill you in. And but let me tell you something. When on the outside, people are looking on, they're like, it must be so sad to be Bob and Carrie. They don't have like a big TV. They don't even have cable. And listen, we were blessed. And the marriage that we have today is built on that first year of not having anything except each other and the God who called us. And listen, this is why when you read the story of the promise that's given to Abraham, if you're a Christian, and you've read some of the Bible, then you know that there's a trajectory to that, right? So it's like, well, God calls Abraham, and then Abraham has this family, and this family becomes the Jewish people. And listen, but the family, the blessing, that's like now the fulfillment of the blessing, but the blessing always begins with God saying, if you'll obey my voice and walk with me, I'm going to bless you. And listen, not just you, but your family can be the place of blessing. Abraham's blessing was many things, but it was a blessing on him and on his family before it was anything else. And listen, if you want to know what it takes for God to bless your marriage and bless your family, then here's what it means. Do the thing that Abraham did. When God called him, follow him. And like live the way that he's calling you to live, and you are going to find more joy and blessing than you even knew was legally allowed. And so he gets called and he leaves the place, but then look what happens in verse 4. It says, so Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And then Abram took Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and they departed to go to the land of Canaan. And so they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh. And the Canaanites were in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. And he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. Now, if you pause there and give me your attention, the marriage you've always wanted, you want a marriage with the promise of blessing. But number two, you want a marriage with the power of legacy. So Abraham and Sarah leave a place called Ur of the Chaldees. And they go to this area called Shechem, which is in the middle of the promised land. And God says, I'm giving you all of this. Now, let me show you this map of Israel. And they go to Shechem, which is in the middle of the promised land. Now, I was looking for a map online this week, and I found this one. And it was so interesting to me. Now, the map is right, but I do find it interesting. Like, why do you need to show me dolphin in, like, oh, we want you to know it's a sea. You wrote sea twice, like it's a dead giveaway. And so anyway, and I guess they put camel here because, hey, if you smoke, this is where you can hang out. And but I want you to notice this, that Shechem is kind of in the middle of the land. And that's important because everywhere that Abraham would look, he would say that this would be the place of blessing. This is the thing that God is giving to us. And Abraham builds an altar to the Lord, which seems pretty normal. Of course, in that culture, that's what you did. But there's more to it than that. Abraham builds an altar when the place where God gives him this now promise that he's going to give him this particular land. And this now becomes the place where other commitments are made. When Abraham has a son named Isaac, and Isaac has a son named Jacob, when Jacob returns to the promised land and his family are recommitting themselves to the Lord and embracing God's promise to them, it's in this very place. It's in the place of Shechem. In Genesis 35, it says, so they gave Jacob all their foreign gods which were in their hands, and the earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree, which was by Shechem. Well, eventually, Jacob has a son he has 12 sons. One is named Joseph, goes to Egypt. There's a famine in the land. He becomes second in command in Egypt, and the entire family, 72 people in Abraham's family now, go down to Egypt. They grow and multiply, and then what happens? What happens is that as they multiply, they become now millions of people. 400 years go by, and they become slaves. And then, as they become slaves, Moses frees them. Moses dies. Joshua takes over. He goes into the land of promise. And as he does, now they take hold of the land, the promise that they've been given, that they're going to be a land, they conquer the land. And then as Joshua's about to step off the scene, he gives this big speech, the speech that's as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, that speech. He didn't give that speech at Shiloh, the place where the tabernacle was. He gave that speech at Shechem, the place where promises are made. And I put it in your notes there that Joshua made a covenant with the people that day and made for them a statute and an ordinance in Shechem. Now let's fast forward about 1,200 years or so. And the name that whole area isn't so much called Shechem anymore, it's called Samaria. Jesus stops in the middle of the day. He sends his boys into town, his disciples, to get some food, and he sits at a well. A woman comes over to get water, and he asks her for a drink, and that kind of freaks her out because in that culture, men and women didn't speak to each other in public. In fact, so extreme that rabbis in that culture wouldn't even speak to their own wives in public. And so Jesus kind of jumps over that barrier completely by initiating the conversation. Now, you find out a little bit about the woman, that she's been married 5 times, that she's kind of a social outcast. And Jesus talks with her, and her life is transformed as he talks to her about a different kind of water, a living water that can transform her life. Because while everyone else in her life used her, Jesus loved her. Listen, Abraham had no idea that this one act of obedience in this one place would start a chain reaction in history. That one act of obedience in Shechem transformed generations of people. And why Shechem? I mean, it is kind of an interesting place, but I mean, what's special about Shechem? The name Shechem, or if you want to say it in Hebrew, is Shechem. You really got to kind of go for it when you want to say it right. But Shechem is a word that means shoulder. And they're like, well, that's not helping the situation. Like shoulder, that's what it means? Yeah. And we don't get it until we realize that the idea of to shoulder something in our culture meant the same thing in that culture. It meant shouldering responsibility. And in a world that abdicates responsibility and ignores responsibility, the person who is willing to take responsibility can change the world. Or at the very least, change their world and change the future of their family and their legacy. Listen, you aren't powerless to change your future, to change your family's future. You are a thermostat, not a thermometer. You don't just report the temperature. By God's grace, you have the ability, the power to change the temperature in your marriage and in your family and in your future. And you say, how do you do that? There's things that you do day in and day out. Whether you realize it or not, those things are creating a culture in your family. It's like, well, then what kind of a culture do you want to create? So I'm going to give you 3 in particular. If you're a note taker, number 1 is create a culture of joy. That's what you want to create in your home, is a culture of joy. I'm going to tell you the 2 questions that my wife gets asked more than any other. Number 1 question my wife gets asked, are all those stories that Pastor Bob tells true? And yes, they're all based on a true story. No, they're true. They're all true. And then the second question that she gets asked is, Pastor Bob is very funny here. Is he this funny at home? And I really appreciate the fact that my wife says, no, he's way funnier at home. And I feel like that's the nicest thing she's ever said about me. I appreciate that so much. And now you got to understand is that Carrie and I grew up in a very depressing, the homes that we grew up in were depressing, somewhat violent homes. So we made a decision that our family, that our home was going to be a place of joy and laughter. And that whatever happened in the past ended with us. And that we were going to forge something brand new in the future. So we have one goal for our family that we talk about all the time, that we want to be the family that laughs the most. That's the only contest I want to win, is for a family that laughs the most goes to the Franquist family. And by the way, when my kids' friends come over and they spend an afternoon or a day at our house or have dinner with us or whatever, my kids tell me this, that they will inevitably get asked, like, hey, is it like this all the time here? And like, yeah, it's always a party here at the house. And it's like, that just gives me great joy. Why? Because where there's laughter, there's connection. Where there's connection, there's communication. Where there's communication, there's joy. And friends, where there is deep joy, Jesus is there. And that is the goal for us. That's why Nehemiah would say, the joy of the Lord is your strength. And friends, so you want a culture of joy. Number 2, you want a culture of devotion. A culture of devotion meaning this, not only devotion to one another, but devotion to God. Because when we are committed to the Lord, it draws us closer together as a couple and as a family. Listen, let me tell you what happens. When we start neglecting time with God as a family, and I'm just talking about, you don't have to have family Bible studies. It's awesome if you do, but you've got to all be making it a point to, hey, we're going to spend time with God every day. And that now becomes just the common speak in your house and commonplace in your house. But let me tell you what happens. When that starts to go, then being here and hearing the Bible taught and being around believers that are going in the same direction as you, that starts to go as well. And when parents don't make church a priority, the kids don't see it as important at all. Friends, listen, our children's ministry, we have one goal, and that is to make children's ministry the best hour of your kids' week. But understand, we only get them for an hour. There's 177 other hours that we've got to work together so that our kids continue moving in the direction that we want them to go, and that we are teaching and you are teaching and we're reinforcing these important spiritual truths in both ways so that we continue to make it a priority. And then number 3 is you want to create a culture of trust. A culture of pursuit. And what do I mean by this? Is that no matter how long you've been married, that you want to keep pursuing each other like you did in the beginning. Because when you talk about, well, when we started dating, you think about, these are all like the grand gestures that you did. But the things that you did to get your spouse are the things that you need to do to keep your spouse. And that's super important because in the early days, you're willing to go over the top. You're willing to do everything you can to win her. Spend money you don't have, send the unexpected message, show up with something just because. And listen, but in the early days, it's easy, but we got to keep doing those things. Now, I remember when my wife and I had been dating for about 2 months, I took her out on our first really fancy date. It was Valentine's Day, and it was we had been dating about 2 months. I was 19 and she was 18. In fact, I have a picture from that date, and that's it. I know, so sexy. And Carrie looks good too. And so anyway, so we had been dating for a couple of months, and I took her to this restaurant that she had talked about that someday she would want to go. This restaurant called Yesterday's, and it was on the intercoastal of Fort Lauderdale. And so I remember making the reservation. It's the first reservation I've ever made in my life. And we walked in, and it was called Yesterday's because it's like this throwback to the 1920s. And but I remember walking in and thinking this was the fanciest establishment I had ever been to in my life. And then we sit down. And now, Carrie had been to a few really nice places with her grandparents growing up because she would spend the summer with her grandparents. But I had never been to anything that nice. The closest I had gotten to was like La Carreta. That was as far as as close. And so anyway, so we sit down, and the server comes over. He's wearing gloves, and this was even before COVID. And he has this little, these little tongs, and he hands us a warm towel. And I was like, wow, thank you. And I had no idea what to do with it, but I saw that my wife, Carrie, was cleaning her hands. And I'm like, oh, that's what you do. So I cleaned my hands, and then I started washing my face. And she was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I had an itch, and sorry. And so anyway, she's mortified. And so now, guys, I'm going to tell you something. I spent more on that meal than I spent on the car that drove us there, okay? Just to kind of give you an understanding of that. At the time, and because it was on the intercoastal of Fort Lauderdale, you had to valet the car. All cars had to be valeted. I was driving a white 1981 Toyota Corolla. And I just want to tell you something. It was not 1981. It wasn't even 1991. I mean, this car was trashed. And so I think my favorite moment is because we got there pretty early before it got busy. And so I pulled the car up, and then they give you the ticket. And then we went in. There wasn't anybody at the valet when we got in. By the time we left, it was really busy. And then I had to turn in my ticket. And dude, all these cars are pulling up, and they're all like Mercedes and BMWs, and they're really nice cars. And then the valet guy shows up with my Corolla, and he gets out of the car, doesn't even call the number. He's like, "Whose car is this?" And I say to Carrie, and I'm like, "We're just gonna chill here for a little bit, not say anything." And I was so embarrassed, and I just waited. And people are like, man, who's this? Like, yeah, what guy brought this piece of junk here? And I'm really like getting into character. And I'm like, look at this piece of junk. And so anyway, then it clears out, and I tell the guy, like, hey, dude, thanks so much. I appreciate it. And I got out of there, and I never went back. And probably why the place closed. And now, listen, it's very easy. It's very easy to go all out when you're trying to win her love. But listen, the marriage you've always wanted, you got to keep pursuing her. These are the things that you've got to continue to do. You've got to keep pursuing him. So some of you know this, that I got invited to the White House a few weeks ago. And so when we flew to Washington, and then we stayed in an area of Washington that's called the Navy Yard, which is just south of like the National Mall and all that. And so now, I'm an early riser. It's just since we've had kids, I'm always the first one awake in the house. But in all fairness, I'm also the first one to go to sleep. So just to balance it out. But anyway, so when we got to D.C., we got there late on Monday night, and then so early Tuesday morning, I wake up, and Carrie's still asleep, and so and this is just kind of a thing I do when we go somewhere, I quickly get dressed, and I kind of sneak out of the room before she wakes up, and then I go downstairs, and I talk to the guy doing security, and I say, hey, where's the nearest Starbucks? And he says, oh, do you see that building over there? And I'm like, yeah, that's the Department of Transportation. He goes, that's where it is. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, obviously, there's no way that the closest Starbucks is inside the Department of Transportation. Sure enough, the closest Starbucks is inside the Department of Transportation, which I thought was very odd, especially since I had no transportation to get there, and I had to walk 3 blocks. And so anyway, I go inside, and I'm going to place her order of what she likes, but I know that she's going to sleep. I know she's going to sleep for a little longer, so I just order an espresso because that's all I drink. I don't drink a fancy drink there. So, and I'm going to sit there and just drink my espresso and people watch, which I enjoy doing, especially in D.C. because there were just so many weirdos. And so that was a lot of fun because there is such an interesting convergence that happens at a coffee shop. It's just like, it's and especially there because it's like, hey, that guy is, in the Navy, and that guy's like, that people like full like combat gear. And anyway, so, but then I get done. I'm like, okay, I think we're getting closer. And then I order her favorite breakfast, and I order her caramel macchiato. And, at Starbucks, they like it when you really mix it up, like make it impossible. So I order it fancy. And then so I get that, and then I go across the street to CVS, and because they have the type of water that she likes, they have it there, but they have it in the fridge. And I'm like, hey, my wife doesn't like cold water. She likes room temperature water. Do you have any in the bag? So they find me a room temperature one, and then I get it, and then I walk back, and then I go up to our floor, and I'm like ever so quiet, getting back into the room, closing the door, and then I just put everything on the nightstand, and I just lay back down as if I had never left. And so when she wakes up, she's got everything there waiting for her. Now, thank you. Appreciate that. I keep telling people I really am quite something. And so I'm hoping it's going to stick. And so anyway, but now, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's a coffee and a bagel and a water. That's it. But it's kind of more than a coffee and a bagel and a water at the same time, right? It's just one of the many ways that I try to tell her that I'm more than willing to make my life more difficult if it makes her life easier. And guys, thank you. And so, appreciate that. And but guys, this is what your wife is looking for. And all it takes is a little bit of desire. And maybe downloading the Starbucks app. But that's it. Like, it's not that hard. And so, and here's what that does. And here's like the part where that just now becomes an exponential type of blessing, where you're creating that culture of pursuit, you're creating that in your home. You're creating that connection between you and your wife, and your kids are taking note of that. And when they go to marry someone, you're not going to have to worry who they choose, because they're going to choose well, because they've been looking for someone like what they've been watching their entire life. That's the key. Okay, then here's what we're going to wrap it up in verse 8, where he says this, and he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. You're like, I didn't know artificial intelligence was in the Bible. ChatGPT is right here. It's like, okay, that's not ChatGPT. Ai is the name of a city. And there they built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. And so Abraham journeyed, going still toward the south. Now, if you pause there and give me your attention, here's the last thing. The marriage you've always wanted is you want a marriage with the plan to grow. I want you to notice something about Abraham and Sarah. They never stopped growing. They never got to the place where, like, we built an altar. We're good. Instead, everywhere they went, they built an altar. And then they went from the place that they were staying, and it says that they went to the mountain. Listen, the plain or the valley is the place where life gets easy. To go to the mountain, I mean, that's much more difficult. Most of us are trying to make life easier for ourselves, not to make it more challenging. And yet, sometimes we think that, well, I just want to make it easy, and that's the way that marriage works better. That's not the case. Your marriage gets better when you keep climbing mountains and building altars. And you realize that every place becomes a place of worship and devotion. Pitching a tent is a temporary thing. You're there for a while, then you roll up the tent, you move on to the next place. But the altars stayed long after Abraham and Sarah stepped into eternity. So what do we do as couples? We keep building altars. We keep drawing close to God because the only way that marriage works is when we invite God in. Listen, most people want to invite Jesus to the to the wedding. Like, hey, we want to get married in a church. We want God's blessing. But you got to invite him into your marriage. You got to invite him into your home, into your family. That's way harder. Listen, what does it take to climb a mountain? These guys are like, oh, they went to the mountain. What does it take? I mean, it takes commitment. It takes sweat. It takes understanding. And you've got to have all of that to have a marriage that's blessed. And you'll see God multiply your effort as you do. But friends, for that to happen, that's not something you just muster up on your own. That's something that we need God's help in our lives. Because listen, the life that we want, the marriage that we want, the family that we want, it begins with one person making a decision that you're going to follow Jesus, and then Jesus starts transforming your life and everything around you. Because that's what he wants to do. Jesus wants to transform your life. He wants to transform your past and forgive it. He wants to give you peace in the present. He wants to give you hope for the future. But that can begin even now. And you might say, but Pastor, I've made so many mistakes. Yeah, we all have. And listen, it's not so much about how you start as it is how you finish. And today can be the day. Today can be the day that you can start over. That we can have a reset. A day that can impact every other day in your life and mine when we make a decision to follow Jesus. So I'm going to invite us all to stand. And listen, I'm telling you this because when we think about change and how change is possible, some of us, we've been carrying around guilt and shame. We've been carrying around regrets. We've been carrying around decisions from the past, and we just keep dragging it with us. And sometimes because we keep dragging it with us, we just keep repeating all those same patterns over and over and over again. And friends, what I want to tell you is that today is the day that we can stop repeating those patterns. And instead, we can see God do something brand new in our lives that transforms us from the inside out, starting right now. And listen, all of us are in need of forgiveness. Every single one of us has failed at some point. We've all made mistakes. We've all sinned. That's what the Bible says. But Jesus came to this earth. He died on a cross. He rose again. And that now gives us hope that when we invite him into our lives, a transformation is possible. Listen, some of us have tried everything on our own to change. And guess what? For some of us, the addiction is still there. The dependency is still there. The anger is still there. The destructive emotions are still there. The problems are still there. And all the regrets are still there. But what if today was the day that we just laid it all at Jesus' feet and said, God, could you do something with this mess and change me? Friends, I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this because it's not a theory, because it's my story. Because I wasn't looking for God, but I'm telling you that he was looking for me. And you might say, well, Pastor, I'm just here for a picture and that's it. I'm not into God. Well, listen, he's into you. And he wants to change your life. And you and I can keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over again and coming up empty. Or we can decide that we're going to bypass all of that. And we're going to come to Jesus. And listen, if you come to Jesus, you say, yeah, but nothing changed. If nothing changes, nothing changes. But what happens if you come to Jesus and something changes? Well, if something changes, then now there's the possibility of everything changing. That your life can change. Your legacy can change. Your family can change. Your future can change. Everything can change. Why? Because Jesus, who died for you, wants to change your life because he loves you. And so listen, I'm going to give you an opportunity to take a step in his direction. The Bible says this: if you draw near to God, he'll draw near to you. And so he's already here. And so I want to invite you. When they begin to sing, I want you to, from wherever you're standing, I want you to take a courageous step. And I want you to step out and meet me here at the base of this stage. And I want to pray for you. And I want to pray with you. And you're going to leave this place different than when you came in, whether you feel it or not. you're going to leave this place different than how you came in, and you're going to be able to circle it on the calendar and say, this is the day that everything began to change. And so if that's what if you say, Pastor, that's me, I need it to change. I got to leave all this stuff behind. I want my family, my legacy, my future, I want it all to be different. If that's the hope, then I want you to meet me here when they begin to sing and watch what God can do with one life that surrenders to him. So if you're ready, this is the moment. Pastor George, lead us.
Your love so deep is washing over me. Your face is all I seek. You are my everything. Jesus Christ, you are my one desire. Lord, hear my only cry to know you all my life. Your love so deep is washing over me. Your face is all I seek. You are my everything. Jesus Christ, you are my one desire. Lord, hear my only cry to know you all my life.
Yeah, God bless you. God bless you. Hey, listen. Listen, can I tell you something and encourage you in something? This is the most important decision you're ever going to make in your life. Yeah, come on up. We'll wait for you. Come on. Yeah, God bless you. Yeah, come on. We'll wait for you. Come on, guys. We'll wait for you. Yeah, come on up. We'll wait for you. Listen, this is the most important decision you're ever going to make in your life. And I know it because I experienced it. I remember when it was my moment. And that was 32 years ago in my brother's kitchen that he challenged me and said, today is the day to take a step. And my wife was there. We were just dating at the time, and we just made that decision together. And we've been walking and growing and learning and experiencing this together. And I'm telling you that this is the decision that changes every other decision that you're ever going to make. And so I'm going to pray with you guys in just a second, but I just want to say this because in a room our size, there's whole families that are together, and you come to Calvary and you brought your whole family with you. And some people you've been feeling this. Like we gave the invitation and you're like, man, I felt something like I was supposed to go up there, and you've been holding back, and you're like, I don't know what that feeling is. Let me tell you what that is. That's God calling you. And so I want to invite you. Yeah, come on up. We're going to wait for you. Yeah. That's God calling you. And I just want to encourage you in this, is that if you felt that, and you're like, man, I didn't know what to do with that. I understand that. But I want to just encourage you in this. If you felt that and you're like, man, I'm standing here and I know I'm supposed to be there. I'm not going to have the band play again, but I just want to invite you to take the boldest step you've ever taken in your life and meet these amazing people. Be with this group that is taking that step. If you say, I'm supposed to be there. Maybe you brought someone, you attend Calvary, just turn to them, say, hey, if you want to go up, I'll go up with you. And we've experienced that in every service. People just with their arm around their friends and loved ones, and people saying, hey, let me go, and we're going to do this together. But if that's you, I'm going to invite you to do it. This is the moment, right now. Come on, guys. God bless you. Yeah. Yeah. So listen, I want to pray for you. And I want to lead you in a prayer. And I just want you to understand that this is not some kind of magic formula or anything like that. They might be my words, but I really do I pray that they express your heart to God in this moment. Because listen, when we pray in sincerity, God hears, answers, and acts. And everything begins to change. Come on up, guys. Yeah. Yeah, God bless you. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So, this is called stalling, by the way. People just keep coming up, so if everybody's, all right. Church, let's pray together. Lord, we want to thank you so much for your incredible faithfulness and how you meet us in these moments. Lord, you love these people so much that you created a circumstance, a day, a moment, a phone call, a conversation that brought them here to hear the gospel and where their lives can be totally transformed because you love them. This is not man's doing, Lord. This is what you're doing in their lives. And Lord, we're just grateful to be here in the moment when you're doing this in their lives. And so I pray, God, that as they call out to you, that you would hear from heaven and transform them where they stand, and that this would be the day that changes every other day going forward. Those of you that have come forward, I'm going to invite you to repeat this prayer after me out loud. Say, "Dear God, I come to you today, and I'm sorry for all my sins, but I thank you for Jesus, who died for me, that I might have life. I want to walk with you, starting right now. In Jesus' name, amen." Amen.
Thank you for joining us today. If you made a decision to follow Jesus and begin a relationship with him, congratulations. It's the best decision you're ever going to make. Now, you may be wondering, what's my next step? Where do I go from here? Here's what I want to encourage you to do. Go ahead and click on that first link below, and we'll send you this book. It's called Begin. It's written by Pastor Bob, and it's going to help you take those first steps on your new journey of faith. So remember, to stay up to date with everything happening here at Calvary, make sure you follow @MyCalvary on Instagram and Facebook. So until next time, we love you. We're praying for you. God bless you.